Merry Christmas, Reverend Barbara. And this is a gift for you. Muddy Waters by Reverend Barbara Dominic. I sat staring out the window in the bedroom that I shared with Susie, my younger sister, while listening to Billie Holiday's God Bless the Child. After a hard day of work, nature and the sound of Billie's voice soothes my soul. We lived in a two-family house that my mother owned with my dad, who died a year earlier, after my sister was born. The bedrooms were on the parlor floor, the living room, kitchen, shed, and the bathroom were on the ground floor. An apartment on the top floor was occupied by tenants. Our bedroom window offered a wonderful view of not only our backyard, but of all the neighboring backyards. Some were pristine, others covered with concrete, but our backyard, well, my grandma thought it was a mess, grass and weeds growing everywhere. Embarrassed, she tried to convince my mother to clean it up, but my mother did not give a flip. As I looked out the window, I remembered a few months ago when the little room next to our bedroom was empty. An empty room was like a big wide open door that beckoned, "Do come in." I would go into the little room, climb out the window onto the roof of the shed, and just sit there taking in a most magnificent panoramic view of all the backyards. It was a peaceful most of the time. There were also times when my peace was interrupted by demands from my mother to turn off my music and get off her shed. No longer empty, the little room was now occupied by my grandmother, who lived with us to keep an eye on my sister. Mother worked nights, and on occasion, I was required to work overtime. The room was too small to hold all of my grandmother's belongings, and she yearned to be back in a full-size apartment of her own. But she had to wait until the tenants in the upstairs apartment moved out. I too felt the need for more space in my life. I had a great job and I wanted more freedom. As much as I loved my sister, I wanted my own space. It was a privacy issue. This is like living in a college dorm and having to share space with a roommate. In 4 months, the tenant's lease would be up and they would be gone. We would move to grandmother to the upstairs apartment, leaving the little room up for grabs. Perfect timing. The Christmas holiday and festivities were about to embrace our lives. Having my own room would be a wonderful gift to me. It was all I thought about. So now all I had to do was to get my nerve up to ask my mother about moving into this magical doorway to nature, and I had 4 months to get it together. Finally, that day did come. The tenants were gone. We moved my grandmother into her new apartment, and within a week, she had comfortably settled in. Well, go ahead, ask her. No, too scared. You know how it is when you talk to yourself, hoping to find some kind of inner strength. I had 4 months to prepare. I knew it was not going to be easy with my mother, and here I was with no plan, no strategy, and no words. So I thought, okay, I'll just play it by ear. I approached my mother one night before she left for work and just asked, "Mother, do you mind if I move into the little room?" She looked at me and responded with a simple and blunt no. And that was the end of it. No consideration to talk, just a stern and final no. My mother was very intimidating. She had that look that was enough to make us feel uncomfortable. Children should be seen and not heard. She still considered me a child, but she constantly reminded us we were forever and always her children. I had to try again. I was already 24 and afraid to make my mother aware of my needs. This was ridiculous. I needed her to respect me as a person and not as her child. I was determined to approach her again. I decided to catch her in what I thought might be a good mood, or at least relaxed. I came home one day to find her laughing and joking with my grandmother. Good sign, I thought. I went into the kitchen to put away the groceries I bought and waited. With the cake baking in the oven, she would have to come into the kitchen and I would be there. Gail, I was jolted out of my thoughts. Are you daydreaming again? I felt my heart pounding in my ears. People do not get anything anywhere in life by daydreaming, she said. Ah, oh yes, they do. What are you dreaming about anyway? She asked. Can she hear my heart pounding? I had to be careful. She was already criticizing me. But here was the moment, and she was the one who opened the door. How could I back down now? I want to move into the little room. It would give Susie more room, and most of all, we'll each have our privacy. Privacy? She seemed surprised. Is there something you want to hide that you feel you need privacy? No, nothing at all, Mother. I need to stretch out. Even if it is a little room, it would be mine, my things in my space. She just stared at me as if trying to look into me, hoping to figure out my motives. My mother looked at me very sternly and said simply, no, you have your own room already. Damn, this was hard. No, I politely responded. I don't have my own room. My mother shot me one of her do not start with me looks, said no, and she walked out of the kitchen without even checking the cake in the oven. She blew me off again. I followed right behind her, determined to stand my ground. Is there a reason you don't want me to move into the little room? That's for me to know. I just looked into her eyes and said, what do you mean? She was trying to avoid me. I was not willing to give in, not this time. Are you challenging me, Gail? This is my house and you do as I say. I am your mother. This didn't sound good. I just asked a simple question. I want to move into the little room and you're telling me why I can't. That's not fair. I deserve an answer. In a quiet and yet menacing tone, she said, I don't have to give you a reason why. How dare you question me? This is my house and I'm your mother. And I said, no, no is no. And that is final. This is getting bad, but I had to keep going. I need my own space. Maybe I should just get my own apartment. I wasn't ready for a radical move like that, but I thought I'd try a new approach. Her voice raised in anger. Oh, so you're going to abandon your family because you can't get what you want? Is that it, Gail? Then it got worse as she pointed her finger at me. She spewed the venom. You're a selfish, no good for nothing. Damn, I opened the Pandora's box this time. She went on. And who's going to help me with these bills? I'm taking care of your sister and your grandmother. One salary. She went on and on. When she raised her hand towards me, I flinched. I thought she was going to hit me, but she just held her hand, palm up to the ceiling, and swore to God she was a good mother who didn't deserve such a selfish daughter. I couldn't believe how things went so badly. I felt so bad. I really hurt her. Even worse, I felt bad that I was feeling bad. A wave of guilt for threatening to leave overwhelmed me. I fought it back as best I could. I am not selfish, and I don't complain about the money you take from me for the bills. I give it freely. I don't think there's anything wrong with me wanting my own room. She gave me a blank stare like I was crazy. I turned and walked out of the room, frustrated and surprisingly angry. I stood up to her for the first time in my life. I went to the Brooklyn Botanical Garden to try to calm myself and clear my head. I sat in the conservatory near a pond and inhaled the various fragrances. There were lotus flowers in the pond that I'd never noticed before. Their beauty struck me as I sat staring at them to get my mind off what had just happened. Breathe, Gail. Just breathe slowly. Slowly inhale. Slowly exhale. Breathe. There was always some kind of conflict. Mother didn't like my friends, the clothes I wore, or the music I listened to. But I never fought back before. What was all that grief about the bills? The house was paid for before my father died. We were in good finances, and even though she demanded I contribute to the household, it taught me to be responsible. That was fine. This is just another ploy to manipulate me. As I walked home, I thought about that beautiful lotus flower. The lotus flower can only bloom in muddy waters. It will not survive clean or pure water because the nutrients it needs are in the muddy water. In the Buddhist tradition, the mud represents suffering and pain, and we are meant to rise above it. The spiritual meaning of the lotus flower is rebirth. I realized it would have been too simple had my mother granted my request the first time I approached her. I needed this conflict among so many. This is a pivotal moment. From my mother's perspective, no matter how old I would always be her child. If I stayed home, I could never be my own woman. Like the lotus, the conflict between my mother and me was the mud I needed to help me grow. I am a woman, and a little room is for a little girl. It was time for my rebirth. The following 2 days, I was off from work. I called a realtor. We met, and he showed me photos of 4 apartments we could visit. One of them was a garden apartment with a lot of natural light streaming in. The photos of the garden were taken during the spring season, and they were beautiful. There was a brick path that led to a magnolia tree. On either side, there was an array of different potted plants, manicured bushes, flower beds, and a tiny herb garden. I did not need to see the other apartments. We visited the garden apartment, and I loved it. Ah, I could hear the distant voice of Billie Holiday singing to my heart. After completing the necessary documents, I was told I would hear from the management office once my information was checked out. I felt excited and nervous all at the same time. I was about to leave the home I grew up in. I was leaving my family. A host of butterflies swarmed my stomach. Several days passed and I did not hear anything from the management office. Christmas was 3 weeks away. Given it was a holiday season, I probably would not hear until after the new year. Although the butterflies persisted, I felt confident I made the right decision for myself. Even if I did not get the apartment, it was definitely time for me to be on my own, to have my own. Are you ready to have your own? Yes, Billy. The call came and I braced myself. Gail, your information checked out. You can pick up the keys tomorrow. Please bring a check for the first 2 months. The butterflies in my stomach exploded. Oh crap, this was it. Was I really going to step across that threshold? Suddenly, my mother's voice interrupted my thoughts. Daydreaming again, Gail? She was staring right into me. My sister Susie was standing beside her. I needed a moment to share my news. I paused and I started. I need you to pick up salt tomorrow. Snow is in the forecast for the weekend. Do you mind if Susie goes with you? It wasn't a question. Mother, what I was just about to say before you interrupted me is the words continued to flow out of my mouth. Was this me? I want you to know how much I love you and how much I love my family. I always think of this as my home, but it's time for me to be on my own. I found an apartment. I hope you understand. This is an important choice I had to make for myself. Shocked, even maybe a little hurt. She froze, then came the anger. You are not going anywhere. You belong with your family. You are going to stay right here in this house. She paused and continued. I worked too hard, sacrificed too much for you to stand there and tell me, your mother, that you're leaving? Where do you think you're going? Who told you about this apartment? One of your friends? Did they tell you to leave home? You won't last any time out there by yourself. I said quietly with my confidence growing, it's done, Mother. I'm picking up my apartment keys tomorrow. Susie offered to take her on the situation. You'll be back. What a moment. No butterflies in my stomach now. I felt lighthearted. I smiled as I thought once more about the lotus flowers. No, Susie, I won't. My mother went on a rant about the things she did for me, the struggle and hardship she suffered raising my sister and me after my father passed. It was a monumental shame, blame, and guilt trip. She was so angry. My grandmother came down to find out what all the noise was about. My mother told her that her ungrateful granddaughter was leaving home. Grandmother looked at me with a smile and left the room. I took that opportunity to leave as well. This time, my mother followed me, continuing her rant, adding that it had to be crazy. On and on she went until she finally stopped. She did not speak to me for the rest of the evening or serve me dinner. The next day, I had breakfast with my grandmother. I told her about the apartment and how excited I was. It warmed my heart when she hugged me and told me she was proud of me. Off I went to the rental office to sign the lease and pick up my keys. By the time I left, there was a light dusting of snow on the ground. So I headed to the store to pick up the salt Mother wanted, but first to my new home. My heart swelled. I was doing this. Nervous? Excited? Yes, I was. As I walked, I could feel the soft, watery snowflakes kissing my face. I wanted to kiss them back. I walked through my home. I pictured what would go where. I had my garden. I called some of my buff friends to ask them for help with my move. They were happy for me. On the day I moved out of my mother's house, she was still giving me the silent treatment. I was grateful as it made it easier to leave. In bliss heaven, I went on a shopping spree to decorate. Later, not knowing how they would respond, I decided to call my family to invite them to Christmas dinner at my place. My grandmother took the call. I'm so happy to hear from you, Gail. How are you liking your new home, dear? Do you need us to bring anything? She asked. I love my apartment, grandmother, and no, you don't need to bring anything. I didn't want to put her to work, but I knew she would prepare dessert, her mouth watering pies. Wonderful. I'm looking forward to Christmas dinner in your new home. She sounded so joyful. Christmas Day, and the apartment was warmly decorated for the holiday. A real tree with wrapped gifts underneath had everything prepared, was ready to lay it all out on the table when the doorbell rang. I looked at the peephole. It was my grandmother. I know I'm early, Gail, but I wanted to bring you these pies and ice cream to chill for dessert. That's my grandmother. She smiled as I showed her my new home, and she loved the snow-covered garden. The doorbell rang, and I was surprised to find standing behind my sister were cousins, uncles, and aunts. I hadn't seen them in months. My grandmother whispered in my ear, "This one is for you, sweetheart. We've got your back." Thank you, grandmother. I love you. And I gave her a warm hug of appreciation. Everyone came with something to put under the tree or on the table. There was so much food. It was a magnificent traditional Christmas feast. The doorbell rang again. Someone yelled out, "That's your Uncle Willie." Excited, I ran to open the door. Uncle Willie was not alone. My mother stood next to him. He ushered her across the threshold into my apartment. This is a very awkward moment. So I broke the ice, smiled, and said, "Merry Christmas, Mother. I'm happy to see you." She seemed to be having a difficult time, but she managed to say, "Merry Christmas, Gail." She gave me a small box that was beautifully wrapped. She wanted me to open it right on the spot. So I did. Inside the box were the CDs of the quintessential Billie Holiday. And so Billie Holiday joined us for the happiest Christmas dinner ever. Merry Christmas. Sending you lots of love, peace, hope, one love. Om Mani Padme Om. 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 Merry Christmas, dear Barbara. Heather and I both love you very much.